Okay. So have you ever, like, been out to dinner with someone,
Yeah.
your partner, and they're just totally on their phone?
Oh, yeah. Happens all the time.
Or maybe it's you.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're trying to talk to you and you're scrolling through Instagram.
Guilty as charged.
It's kind of this weird thing we do these days, isn't it? Like our phones are always there, even when we're supposed to be, connecting with the person right in front of us.
Yeah, it's like this third wheel that just kind of sits there judging.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today, how social media impacts our relationships.
The good, the bad, the ugly.
We're going deeper than just the surface stuff, though. We all know we should maybe spend less time on our phones.
Right.
But we're going to talk about how social media affects us and why.
Because it's not always so simple, right?
Not at all. I mean, I read this fascinating study about how it's not just about how much time you spend on social media, it's how you use it.
Totally. And how it makes you feel, too. That's a big one.
So are you telling me there are ways social media can actually be good for relationships?
Absolutely, there are. But, of course, there's the other side of the coin, too. There are definitely ways it can cause some problems if we're not careful.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Let's break this whole thing down. What's the first thing we need to understand about social media and relationships?
Well, one of the most interesting things is the link between spending a ton of time on social media and having lower relationship satisfaction.
That makes sense. But isn't that just because you're, ignoring your partner to scroll through your phone?
Well, yeah, that's definitely part of it, but it's not quite that straightforward.
So there's more to it.
Think about it this way. Spending a lot of time on social media can actually increase certain negative emotions like, anxiety, loneliness, maybe even depression.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like all those feelings don't just disappear when you close the app.
Exactly. They can linger. You bring them back into the real world with you.
And that affects how you interact with your partner.
For sure. It can lead to, a shorter temper, more arguments, or even just feeling distant from each other.
Wow, I hadn't really thought about it that way before.
And there's even research linking excessive social media use with low self-esteem and relationship problems. It's like a chain reaction.
Okay, I'm definitely seeing a pattern here. So let's say someone's already feeling a bit insecure about themselves or their relationship. How might social media make that work?
Oh, easy. They go online and it's all these seemingly perfect lives, right? Happy couples on vacation, kids hitting milestones, everyone at the gym with these amazing bodies.
Yeah, the comparison trap. It can be brutal.
And for someone who's already feeling a little down, it can really amplify those insecurities. They might start feeling more jealous, resentful, or dissatisfied with their own relationship, even if it's perfectly healthy.
So it's like social media takes those little insecurities we all have and blows them way out of proportion.
Exactly. And then on top of that, there's this thing called technoference.
Technoference.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of scary.
It's basically just a fancy word for those moments when our phones interrupt our interactions with others. Like when you're talking to someone and they keep checking their phone.
Oh, right. Like when you get phubbed.
Exactly.
Who?
Subbed. Being snubbed for a phone, it happens all the time. Dinner, hanging out, you name it.
Yeah, I've definitely been phubbed. And I've probably phubbed other people too, if I'm being honest.
That happens. But even those little moments, they can create distance over time. It's like you're saying, hey, this phone is more important than you, even if you don't mean to.
And that's gotta hurt.
It can,
Yeah.
even if it's unintentional. So, yeah, we've covered some downsides of social media, but it's not all bad news.
Oh, good. Because I was starting to think we all needed to ditch our phones after this.
Not necessarily. Remember, we talked about how it can strengthen relationships, too.
Right. So how can social media actually be a good thing for couples? I'm all ears.
It's all about using it mindfully, focusing on connection instead of just mindless scrolling.
Okay, I like that. So what are some examples?
Well, think about strong relationships. They often involve little sacrifices, right? Putting your partner's needs first.
That's true. So we can apply that to our social media habits.
Exactly. It could be something small, like choosing to watch their favorite show instead of scrolling on your phone, or putting your phone down and truly listening when they need to talk.
It's about being present, showing your partner that they're the priority.
And there's research that shows couples who make these small sacrifices actually have higher relationship satisfaction.
So by being more mindful, we can actually counteract some of those negative effects we talked about earlier.
For sure. It's about shifting our focus from the screen to the person right in front of us. Those little acts of putting their needs first build trust, closeness, and that sense of being a team.
I love that. It's like an antidote to all the self-centeredness that social media can sometimes create.
I like that, an antidote. It reminds us that true connection happens in real life, not through likes and comments.
Okay, so we've talked about how social media can lead to distance in relationships.
Yeah.
But let's get specific. What are some of the ways it can really backfire? Like, what should we be watching out for?
Well, one of the biggest dangers is that social media can set up all these unrealistic expectations for relationships.
Oh, so.
People start comparing their own partner to these idealized versions they see online, and that can lead to a lot of disappointment and resentment.
Right. It's easy to forget that everyone has their struggles, their flaws. No relationship is as perfect as it looks on Instagram.
Exactly. People get caught up in those perfect couple images and start feeling like their own relationship isn't good enough.
Like you're setting yourself up for disappointment from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And then there's infidelity, which social media doesn't exactly make things more difficult.
It's definitely a factor. Social media makes it so easy to connect with people outside your relationship. The constant stream of potential partners can be tempting.
Like having a buffet of temptation right at your fingertips. And then it also makes it easier to hide things from your partner, which just destroys trust.
It's not a great mix. But before we go too far down that road, it's important to remember that social media isn't all bad.
For you, that's good to hear.
A little digital detox now and then is never a bad idea. But seriously, there are absolutely ways social media can benefit relationships.
Okay, good. I'm feeling a little more optimistic now.
It really comes down to intention. Using it in a way that strengthens your connection, not weakens it.
So give me some examples of how social media can be a positive force in relationships.
Think about long-distance couples. Social media can be a lifeline, a way to stay connected even when they're miles apart.
Right. Sharing their day-to-day lives.
Exactly. And even for couples who aren't long distance, it can be a fun way to stay in touch throughout the day. Sharing funny memes, sending messages, tagging each other in things you think they'd enjoy.
Like little digital love notes.
Exactly. And then there's the fact that social media can be a great platform for showing appreciation for your partner.
Oh yeah, like leaving a nice comment on their photo or sharing something they posted that you're proud of.
Totally. Just acknowledging how much they mean to you.
So the key takeaway is that social media itself isn't the enemy. It's about using it thoughtfully, making sure it doesn't become the center of your relationship.
You got it. Balance and intention are key.
Speaking of intention, I came across something really interesting in my research. Have you ever heard the concept of mudita?
Mudita. Sounds familiar. Isn't that something from Buddhism?
It is. It essentially means finding joy in other people's happiness.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful. How does that relate to social media?
Well, some studies suggest that if you can approach social media with this sense of mudita, seeing your loved ones succeed online can actually boost your own mood.
That makes sense, actually. If you care about someone, their happiness should make you happy too.
Exactly. That's the whole idea behind mudita, celebrating other people's wins without feeling jealous or competitive.
So the next time I see a friend post about like an amazing vacation or promotion, I should try to approach it with mudita.
That's the idea. Instead of feeling that pang of envy, try to genuinely feel happy for them. It's a healthier way to engage with the social media.
I like that. I'm definitely going to try it.
Makes you think though, doesn't it? When you see good things happening to people on social media, does it usually bring you joy? Or does it sometimes trigger a bit of envy?
That's a great question. It really gets at the heart of how social media impacts us, both emotionally and in our relationships.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, right? How much power social media has over us. I mean, it can bring us together, it can inspire us, but it can also feed into those insecurities and even hurt our relationships if we let it.
It's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
But like you said, we have the power to choose how we use it. It can either add to our lives or take away from them. Absolutely. And speaking of choices, that kind of brings us to some of the key takeaways from what we've talked about so far. One of the biggest things is that link between how we feel and, the quality of our relationships.
Yeah, that makes sense. So tell me a little more about that connection.
Well, think about it. When you're feeling good, happy, confident, secure, you're naturally going to be a better partner. More patient, more understanding, more loving, all that.
Oh, for sure. It's hard to be a good partner when you're feeling down or stressed out. But where does social media fit into all of this?
Well, like we've been saying, it can kind of trigger a lot of those negative emotions, right? The comparison game, all that. It can lead to jealousy, insecurity, loneliness, heck, even depression sometimes. And those feelings can really poison a relationship if we aren't careful.
Like a domino effect. Social media impacts how we feel, and then that impacts how we act in our relationships.
You got it. So the first step is like being aware of how social media is making you feel. Like if you're scrolling and you start to feel inadequate, or you're comparing yourself to others, or if you're just getting sucked into negativity, that might be a sign to take a break.
So awareness is key. What else can we do to kind of protect our relationships from those downsides of social media?
Well, it's not just about being aware of how it makes us feel. It's about being mindful of how we're actually using it too, you know?
So like setting some boundaries, talking to your partner about when and how you both use social media.
Exactly. It all comes down to those honest conversations. Maybe you guys decide like, okay, no phones at dinner, or maybe no phones when we're out for a walk or something. Or maybe certain areas of the house are phone-free zones, you know?
I love that. Creating those like sacred spaces where you can actually connect without the distractions.
Exactly. And hey, sometimes it might even mean taking a break from social media altogether. Even just a short break can be like so refreshing for your mental health and your relationship.
The digital detox. It sounds scary, but kind of liberating too, right? Like hitting the reset button.
It can be super powerful, gives you the chance to reconnect with your partner and just reconnect with the world around you without all that digital noise.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a question to think about. Think about your own social media habits. Do they bring you closer to the people you love? Or do they actually create some distance?
That's a great question. And kind of building on that, we talked about that concept of mudita earlier. Could bringing a little bit of that sympathetic joy, being happy for others, into your social media experience actually improve your relationship?
It's such a cool idea, right? Celebrating each other's wins instead of feeling envious. I think that could have a really powerful impact on relationships.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff, right? Like, what if we all just, tried to approach social media with that sense of mudita? Just imagine how much more positive and supportive our online interactions could be. Seriously, though, it all goes back to that idea of choice. We have the power to decide how we use it, how it makes us feel, and ultimately how it affects our relationships.
It's not about like demonizing social media altogether. It's more about like being aware of those potential downsides and then making those conscious choices to use it in a way that actually makes our lives better, not worse.
Yeah, it's a tool, right? Like any tool, it can be used for good or bad.
That's a great way to put it.
So, next time you're out with your partner and you're tempted to just scroll on your phone, maybe put it down for a bit and see what happens.
Maybe the best relationship advice is just to put down the phone and be present with the person right in front of you.
Seriously, you might be surprised by how much more connected you feel and how much deeper those conversations can get.
It's all about remembering what actually matters. Those real, genuine connections that bring us joy, support, love, all that good stuff. Those are the connections that are worth nurturing both online and offline.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into social media and relationships.
I hope everyone listening got something out of this, maybe some new insights, some food for thought, and hopefully you feel a little more empowered to create those healthier, more connected relationships in your life.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today.
And until next time, keep diving deep, folks,
Yeah.
and keep those conversations going.